Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, November the 21st, 2018. It is 8 a.m. New York time, 5 a.m. Los Angeles time, 1 p.m. London time, and 12 midnight Sydney, Australia time. And we welcome all of our listeners and people watching us live on Facebook as well. Anywhere around the world that you might be, we hope that you are having a great day, starting one. Maybe you already had one, depending on what your time zone is. But we hope that you're off to a good start. And if you need a little bit of a boost, that's why you're listening, because this is your daily dose of happy. And we are continuing our conversation about Neville Goddard. Cindie and I have been getting it. Cindie's actually introduced me to Neville and really kind of got me on board. So, Cindie, I got to thank you for that, because this Neville exploration has been a lot of fun, to say the least.
Now we just need the post office to bring the book.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. My book is on the way. It is going to be here sometime today. We aren't sure exactly when, but the little tracking number, when I checked that, it finally says, yes, it made it to the post office, my local post office today. So it's going to be out there sometime today. I'm not sure exactly when. But, you know, you have to stop looking at the results until the results show up, right?
Right, but see, that brings me so much happiness knowing that a book is coming.
Yes.
So, like, even if it's coming to someone else, I should stop that, right? Because books are going everywhere every day, but I love getting books. I love books. Really love books.
That's great. I've never heard anybody...
I want to make a wall that's over the top of my office door that looks like a bookshelf, so that the door to my office will be hidden in a big bookshelf, like kind of like a Batman kind of thing, right? Every time I watch a movie with this book, Scott just looks at me and says, I know, like, I'm going to make you one. Like, we're going to make this office a bat cave inside a bookshelf.
Oh, that's great. That's fabulous. I especially like the part where you said that when somebody else gets a book, you're living vicariously through somebody else getting a book. I think that's great.
Right? So you're like, my book's coming today. I was like, yay! Yes, I'm so excited.
Oh, that's fun.
I can't help it.
No, that's good. It's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to like it. I think it's a good thing to get excited. I mean, if you can get excited about that, you can get excited about anything, right?
Right? It's like every time a bell rings, the angel gets its wings.
Yeah, right.
Every time a book gets delivered, I get happy. Like, reading is fundamental. It's important.
It is. Yeah. It certainly is. Oh, my goodness. That's fun. So
I'd love to hear you announce the time zones, because I have this picture of people listening to us as they're waking up, and people listening to us, night owls in Sydney, Australia, that are staying up until midnight listening to us late, and people listening to us all throughout the day. That's really an exciting thing to think about.
It is, yeah. That's one thing that you get. You know how it is. I mean, when you look at your web stats, well, the same thing is true with podcasts. You get access to certain kinds of stats that tells you, when people are tuning in, where they're coming from, what times of day, and all that kind of thing. And it's fun. It's fun to see, there's one particular stat graph that I have that shows like a laid out map of the world, and it shows the hot spots, where people are listening from, and it's fun. You see these hot spots all over the world. It's like, this is great. This is really fun. Good.
Right, the technology, it's just wonderful. We're
Isn't
the
it?
Jetsons.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's funny, I never really thought that I was going to repeat the same phrases that my grandparents said, because my grandparents said that about the telephone. Ain't technology wonderful? And here we are, we're saying the same phrase today. Different thing,
Well, we were talking about that recently, the things that, I'm trying to remember the story, because the person in the story was in their 80s. And, I know what it was. It was a person writing a letter to their bank because they had gotten an overdraft charge. And they said that in their calculation that 3 nanoseconds must have passed between the check that was being cashed on their account and their automatic deposit going into their account. And, because they realized they had the money there. And the funny thing was they wrote this long letter about that they would no longer communicate. They would only communicate with real people at the bank, not the recordings and everything. And it was really humorous. It was so funny that a paper published it. But it made me think, someone that's in their 80s, how much technology they've seen in their life.
It's crazy.
and how crazy it must be to have the memory. Like, I can remember my first bank account. I was 16, and I got a job, and I started getting paid, and I opened a checking account. And I still have the little leather check wallet that I got
really?
from the bank. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
funny.
was 16. And I think, wow, how different it is.
Yeah.
You know, customer service and going in and like knowing your banker and knowing people. And I think for someone that's in their 80s, the span of new things popping up they've seen in their lifetime is just, it's kind of hard to even fathom how many things have changed, how many things are automated, how many things are, you know, I think about that quote that says, you know, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
And it really is. It's like the technology we have is so fantastic. I think Neville would agree, because Neville was advanced in his magic, right?
Absolutely, he was. And
Neville keeps describing quantum physics, and I don't think he had the knowledge about it.
I mean, he was writing and talking at the time that woman in her 80s was a kid. That's how long ago it was, you know? Yeah. It's pretty wild. Yeah. By the way, we haven't even started the book yet. We already have a question, believe it or not.
Excellent.
So let's go to the question and do that first. This is Shireen, who signed on and says, hi again. Hello, Shireen. Hope you're doing well today. How can we deal with past and live in the self-awareness and be happy again, even if the present is hard, she asks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's why we want to do it.
Yeah, right.
Present can be hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we do it in our imagination. I mean, that's the point, is that we talked about this in an earlier book when Neville uses the phrase, I think it was the book Out of This World. He talks about the phrase, a larger dimensional space. Mm. And we talked about, he calls it the fourth dimension, and it's the imagination. It's where we are when we're using our imagination. Kind of think about when you fall asleep and you have a dream. Mm-hmm. And sometimes dreams, I think we've all had at least one dream in our life where we wake up and think, oh my goodness, that was so real. Or I know I've remembered a dream before in the middle of the day and thought, wait, did I dream this or did this really happen?
Right.
Did so-and-so call or was that a dream? I was like, and so he is saying that when we're using our imagination or when we're dreaming, that we're actually inhabiting a larger dimensional space. Mm-hmm. And so we're not in the same space, that space that feels hard, that thing that's going on in our life that's difficult right now. When we let ourselves use our imagination, we enter another space. And in that space, those things that we want have already happened or are happening. We're in the present moment time of experiencing those things. And to me, that's how. That's mm-hmm. the how.
Yeah.
Because I think that was the question, is how do we?
Exactly.
Right? We're always wondering about the how, but that's the how. The how is use your imagination.
Good point. Because we usually want to make the how some sort of an action point. We want to take some kind of action, even an inspired action. Got to do something to make this thing come true that we've been wishing for. But as you're pointing out, the only real how, the only one that really matters, is what's going on inside between our ears. And
right.
When we use that how is the effective one. It's the ones that are outside that you can help manifest things by doing the outside, the external actions. But it's so much easier and more effective when we learn to do it with the inside.
Well, and when we're, alignment first. And then we take the action.
Yeah.
So it's the short answer is faith.
Yeah, right. That's the real short answer. Although at that point the answers get so short that you need the longer answer just so you can understand the short answer.
Yeah, it's keep the faith, hang in there, baby. That's the answer. It's stay the course, hold the vision, believe.
And I think it's frequency too. I'm becoming more and more convinced that the more time we spend on that imagining step, playing it out in our head and just visualizing it and feeling it and experiencing it in our minds, until, as Neville says, until it starts to harden into reality. The more that we do that, the quicker it's going to happen, because we're getting more and more into that vibrational state, and we are actively doing the hardening. We're doing the focusing that needs to happen in order for it to harden. That's what I've been trying to remind myself of the last few days, particularly. Because, I'm like Shireen, and I think you are too. We all get impatient at times. We all get in that mode of like, how am I going to make this happen? Well, you do it through imagination. That's your how.
Yeah, and I know I keep talking about this, but I'm excited about it because everyone that's been listening knows I got married.
Yay.
This month. But here's the thing is that, okay, I mean, we were planning on getting married already, but we hadn't planned anything for it to happen. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing I want to point out is that my vignette wasn't about me getting married.
Right. It was a cool one, too. I like your vignette.
Like 3 weeks ago, I started maybe a month. I mean, when we started talking about this, I decided. So it was, I'll tell you when it was. It was on the new moon because that's when I always start new things.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the past one, but the one before. So I guess it's been a little longer. It's been about 5 weeks. I started practicing a vignette for something different that hasn't hardened into reality yet. Completely. Mm-hmm. But in the vignette, I was wearing a wedding ring. Mm-hmm. And that part's happened.
Yeah.
I'm watching this vignette begin to harden into reality. I'm watching it happen. And that's a pretty big chunk for it to that's a big thing.
It is. Well, especially when you first described it to me, you described how after the ceremony you were out to lunch with the rabbi who performed the ceremony, and during that out to lunch time is when the entire vignette played out exactly the way you imagined it. And I'm thinking that is so cool.
well, actually, it was because the vignette was just a celebration of something happening. Mm-hmm. And in the vignette, I had a wedding ring on, and we were toasting. That's it. That was pretty much the whole vignette.
Right.
But we weren't toasting the wedding. We were toasting the other thing that I'm creating.
Which is okay.
Right? And so this actually, the toast and everything actually happened, the 2 nights before the wedding when we finalized, like, okay, we're going to do this.
That's a cool point you made, by the way, that it wasn't the exact vignette for the event. It was a vignette for a different event, but there was so much overlap that they merged together. They kind of coalesced right before your eyes.
And so I can't stop smiling because I'm like, oh yeah, this is all happening. Everything that, and I was telling you before the show today, and we talked yesterday about, stepping into an identity. Mm-hmm. And I guess it was last October, I decided, I should go back in my journal and get the date, but there were some things that I really wanted. And one of them was to do a podcast. And one of them was to have a writing gig, like a solid gig where I was writing for some publication all the time. Mm-hmm. And the other one was to be known for my card reading. And wow, in November, it's been a year yesterday.
Yeah.
And when I agreed to do the podcast.
I'm so glad you did.
Podcasts, right. And then in March, so a few months later, someone asked me to write for them, and I've written dozens of essays for them. And then shortly after that, maybe a few months ago, I was invited to contribute to a book that became a bestseller about reading cards. And wow. 2 of my mentors, one of them who I don't know, I've idolized this person because she is like the foremost expert. She contributed to the book too. So it's like one of my all-time favorites was in the same book I was in. And all of that, just kind of thinking about it now, it's like amazing. It sort of fell into my lap.
That's cool.
I do talk to people, right? And I hear when there's an opportunity. I mean, I think you can't stay in your house and never meet anyone. You have to. But I didn't work hard to make these things happen at all. Walt knows. He reached out to me out of the blue.
That's true.
I just got this email and went, oh my goodness. Like I just said like a week or so ago, I really want to do a podcast. But I just don't want to have to be the one that does all the technology behind it. I'm doing too much technology already. And boom, there it came.
Yep.
So, yeah, so that's how you hang in there, is that you start getting some experience with actually, I mean, even telling my story, you don't know what this does for me to look back and realize, wow, okay, I just got to keep going.
Yeah, it's kind of awe-inspiring, to say the least. And by the way, I want to acknowledge some more people who have tuned into the live stream. Let's see. Hannah is here. Hello, Hannah. And Nasha joined, and she also said hello. And Rose is here. So thank you all who are joining the live stream of the podcast. We're really glad that you're here. And we're looking forward to getting into the book that we've been talking about.
Yes. Do we have any promotions we want to do first?
We should probably do the promotions. And in fact, I can already report that before we've done the promotions, I got a notification that one of these people had already fulfilled the promotion. So thank you for doing that.
Yes, see, hardening into fact.
That's right. But everybody knows the promotion has been listening to us for any length of time, which is we want people to be subscribers to the podcast. And it's pretty easy to do. Most of the places where we're now posting either the podcast audio or the video have links in them for becoming a subscriber to the podcast. But if by chance you can't find the links, or if maybe we left them out by accident of that particular description, all you have to do is go to the homepage of the website at loatoday.net, and you'll find the links right there, popping right up in front of you. And you just click the link for your device, it walks you right through it, and bang, just like that, you're a subscriber. And once you subscribe, of course, all the episodes are coming right to your smartphone or device every single day that we do them. And then once you're a subscriber, we also want you to be posting about them. And I got to tell you, Cindie, yesterday, after we did the promo yesterday, asking people to put out on social media that they're listening to or watching loatoday.net, I got one post from somebody, or one comment from somebody saying, I've been doing it every single day. And, I went to check her timeline, and there was our video on her timeline. So I just wanted I wanted to thank her for that, and to thank everybody who is helping to share the word that your Daily Dose of Happy is out there and that you've been listening to it, because that really makes a huge, huge difference, not just from a social media algorithm perspective, but from a law of attraction perspective. Right?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, she even said it in her comment to me when she told me that she was a listener and that she was helping to promote it. She says she believes in paying it forward. I thought, what a great way to express it. That's really nice.
Yes, thank you so much. That's
Yes.
so true. It's putting out into the world the things that you want to come back to you. Absolutely.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yay, many blessings. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well,
let's get to it.
Look at where we left off. We are currently reading the book, The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard, or his actual pen name was just Neville. He had one of those rock star names. Just
Right.
One name. And we've covered chapters 1 and 2, and we're about halfway through chapter 3. They're short chapters, but sometimes we do a lot of discussing. So
We do.
Where we left off yesterday, you must be conscious of being healthy if you are to know what health is. You must be conscious of being secure if you are to know what security is. And it's important to recognize those small words that sometimes we want to skip right over, but we must be
Yes.
conscious of being. And that's what happens when we tap into that vignette. In that moment, when I was going through my vignette, in that moment, I was conscious of being married. I had a wedding.
That's true.
I was conscious of celebrating. I was conscious. It was in my imagination, but I was conscious of being that. I wasn't watching from afar. I wasn't thinking about what it might be like to be healthy, to be secure, to be whatever. I was conscious that in those moments I was being, and I think that's what he's getting to here. He says,
that's an important point too, isn't it? When you're talking about the being in the consciousness of it, what you're really talking about is being a part of it, playing a role. Not being the observer from far away, but actually being in the midst of it, being in the thick of it, so to speak. That's where you're really, really living it in your conscious mind, and that's where you're really hardening it into reality.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important. We keep talking about it, but it's such a good distinction. It's so important to bring in the physical sensations.
Right.
And I think they're so much easier than trying to drum up some kind of emotion.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. Like Shireen asked the question about when things are hard.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very difficult, if not impossible thing to suddenly just decide I'm going to drum up, bliss and happiness and joy when things are really hard. But if I can get into my imagination and I can recognize the physical sensations of the story I'm creating. And as simple as what I said before, because that was really true, my feet were flat on the ground. I could feel myself in the chair. My hands were on the table. I could hear the sounds of other people in the restaurant, tinkling glasses and things, noise of the chatter of a low volume chatter of a restaurant crowd. I could smell the glass of wine that was in my hand. I could feel how slippery the crystal of the glass was in my fingertips. So I really had all these sensations going, and that's really that's where I start when I start any vignette, is
right.
Really tapping into those feelings. And I think that's me being conscious of being in that thing.
Sure.
Right? Okay, so...
By the way, before you leave that point, I neglected this before when I was announcing the hellos and greeting people, but Nasha not only said hello, she said, congratulations for your beautiful wedding.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm enjoying celebrating still, and I can't imagine it will stop, so...
No, I don't think so.
So therefore, to incarnate a new and greater value of yourself. I like this terminology. Greater value of yourself.
Yes, that's good.
You must assume that you already are what you want to be, and then live by faith in this assumption. That's really the answer to Shireen's question. Mm-hmm. Which is not yet incarnate in the body of your life. So, no, it has not yet hardened into fact.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In confidence. So you're doing this in confidence that this new value or state of consciousness will become incarnated through your absolute fidelity to the assumption that you are that which you desire to be.
And there's an interesting point that occurs to me right here. What was stimulating it in my mind was the phrase, let's see, where is it? Oh, no, I'm not seeing it. Oh, you must assume that you already are what you want to be and then live by faith in this assumption. You must assume that you already are, and that this requires a degree of self-awareness and also some self-love. I mean, that's what I was reading, what I was hearing when you were reading that. You have to have that belief in yourself, that love in yourself. And it occurred to me that when we do this imagination task, we are in effect building up the feeling of confidence in ourselves, in our belief in ourselves, and love for ourselves. And at the same time,
so good.
And at the same time, we can also, especially in early stages, we can also doubt that we really are deserving, and it makes it kind of hard for us to continue to do the imagining. So I kind of liken the situation to an athlete who's warming up to go into an athletic event. Like baseball is a favorite of mine, American baseball. So, when a hitter goes up to hit, before they hit, they're in what's called the on-deck circle, and they're warming up, and they put a weight on their bat so that they're applying more weight to the bat to, strengthen their swing, so to speak, and get themselves ready to be able to move the bat quickly through the strike zone in order to hit the baseball. And that is all basically building yourself up to be able to perform well once you get into the game. Well, we can do the same kind of things with imagination. We don't have to wait until we're imagining to build up our self-esteem. We can simply count on the fact that when we get in the game, we will be building up the self-esteem. But we can also do it through other means. We can build ourselves up through, mirror exercises or the various other modalities that people engage in. And all of those things are really the setup for doing the imagining, because that's really what they're for. The meditation, the nature walks, the gratitudes, the visualizations, the vision boards, all that stuff is about building up our self-esteem so that when we're ready to actually do the imagining, we are primed and ready for that athletic event. Or it's not an athletic event, but we're primed and ready for that event. And the two really go together.
I love the analogy, though. It's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
And another thing you can do to warm up and to help with that self-love is decide that you can receive a compliment, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. Very important.
It was so funny. Like, just say thank you. That's it. That's it. That's the whole class on how to receive a compliment.
Right?
Just say thank you. That's it. It's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and we had been talking about it over here. And then I walked into an office and said to a woman standing there, "Oh, I love your sweater." And she said, "Oh, this old thing she just deflected and deflected. And I thought, oh, that's funny because we had literally just had a conversation about receiving compliments.
Right.
And so just try it today, and you might be surprised at how many times you get complimented and you don't even recognize it.
Well, we attract them, don't we?
Right?
We attract everything that comes into our lives. So when we focus on, I'm going to be better at taking compliments, we get the opportunity to test it fairly quickly.
Yep, so go test it out today. Yep. And I think you are all wonderful.
Well, thank you very much.
So Neville says, your absolute fidelity, right? This is how the thing becomes hardened into a reality. Through your absolute fidelity to the assumption that you are that which you desire to be. Mm-hmm. This is what wholeness means, what integrity means. They mean submission of the whole self to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, in certainty that a new state of consciousness is the renewing of mind which transforms. I love that one. That's getting highlighted in my actual book. The submission of the whole self to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You see, it's really important in all types of magic and creation that we have a united will. Mm. And that means that your subconscious and your conscious, your inner world and your outer world, they're all in alignment. We talk about alignment a lot. That's what he's talking about here when he says your whole self. You know, somebody says, oh, I have mixed emotions about that. Mm. Hey, do you want to do this? Part of me wants to, part of me doesn't. Well, it's got to be all of me wants to. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite friends says a full body yes.
Yes, right.
I mean, when somebody asks you if you want to do something and there is no hesitation, you know, ask a little kid if they want to go to Disney World or something.
Yes.
Like, that's a full body yes. Like, they don't no hesitation. They don't say, part of me wants to go. Right. So
that's the kind of thing that becomes a YouTube video that goes viral, right? The kid jumping up and down or something.
That's interesting that you say that, because why would that be? Because it's the top of the emotional range.
True.
It's like joy.
Yeah.
And everybody can feel it, and it feels so good. So our whole self. He goes on to say there's no order in nature corresponding to this willing submission of the self to the ideal beyond the self.
That's a strange phrase.
Well, I had to read it. I had to really think about it. And he goes on to let it unfold a little bit, so we'll keep going, but it's really interesting to think about. He says, therefore, it's the height of folly to expect the incarnation of a new and greater concept of self to come about by natural evolutionary process. That which requires a state of consciousness to produce its effect, obviously, cannot be effected without such a state of consciousness. And in your ability to assume the feeling of a greater life, to assume a new concept of yourself, you possess what the rest of nature does not possess. Imagination, the instrument by which you create your world.
That makes
your
more sense.
Imagination is the instrument. That means whereby your redemption from slavery, sickness, poverty is effected. Mm-hmm. If you refuse to assume the responsibility of the incarnation of a new and higher concept of yourself, then you reject the means, the only means, whereby your redemption, that is the attainment of your ideal, can be effected.
Yeah, this is a good segment where you really need to have that Neville decoder ring, because he uses words so differently from the way we're used to using them. But
so we'll go back up to the there's no order in nature,
right,
and recognize that, okay, like there's no place where we can watch this unfold, where we can use some other part of nature's example of tapping into imagination to create something different.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Hey, before we go further, just stepping back for a moment to our discussion about appreciation and gratitude and accepting and taking a compliment, Nasha asked a question, how exactly do we say thank you? Please shed some light on this, which is an interesting question.
In other words, a lot of times when someone else wants to give us something, even if sometimes it's not a compliment, it's an actual gift. Mm-hmm. For instance, how many times have any of us been out to eat with another person? Hey, want to meet for coffee? Want to meet for lunch? Sure, that'd be great. And then we go and the other person says, oh, no, I got this. I'll get the check. Yep. And we say, no, I'll pay for or let me get it, or I'll pay for my own. No, here, I want to pay for myself. Here, instead of saying, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, I recognized that I deflected a lot of gifts by saying, oh, no, I don't want you to do that. And I recognized that I was saying no to the universe. Like, no, don't send money and presents my way. No, I don't want it.
That's so important. It's much more important than we realize, perhaps, because those of us who want to attract more of an abundance into our lives, who want to bring more money in and, have a fuller lifestyle because of it and so forth, we're asking for the universe to deliver it to us. We're not asking to go out there and work hard for it and put our noses to the grindstone and so forth. We're asking the universe to deliver it to us. So if the universe delivers it to us and we say, oh, no, I've got this, what we basically did is negated the entire wish of abundance. We just said, no, thank you. I don't really want the abundance after all.
Right. So in the same way, like when I walked into the office and said, what a beautiful sweater, the person could have just smiled and said thank you and received the compliment.
That's
Someone
right.
just gave me a compliment, right?
Yeah.
And so it's things like that. Like even someone saying to me, congratulations on your beautiful wedding.
Yeah.
Right? What I said thank you instead of, oh, well, it wasn't a huge wedding, and we just put it together, right? But
you could have done that. You could have.
Pay attention when you compliment other people.
Yeah.
Like, throw out some compliments today and see what you get back. See, tell somebody that you like their hairstyle or their clothes or, the way they do something and see how many people deflect the compliment. It's a little experiment, But so when you receive a compliment, I really meant what I said is just say thank you to it. Just say yes. Say thank you.
Just that simple. Just that straightforward. Yeah, good. Okay. So getting back to Neville.
I think when someone gives you a compliment and you receive it, you're doing part of the work that we're talking about here. That's why I brought it up, is that you are seeing yourself, you are conscious of yourself being whatever it is. Right? If someone says to me, wow, you're a great teacher. If I say, well, I'm working on it. Well, right there, I'm not being conscious of myself being a great teacher.
It's true.
And it's not that we shouldn't have some sense of humility, right? We can say, well, thank you very much. I love hearing that. It's something that I work hard on. I want to continue to be even better, right? We can add that humility in there too, but we're being thankful for the compliment.
Oh, absolutely. That's like the story I told about my wife when she was in training to become a psychotherapist. She went to a weekend workshop and loved what the leader of the workshop was doing. Went up to him afterward and said, "You're just amazing." And he says, "Well, if I'm amazing, what does that make you?" And she thought about it for a second and said, "Well, I'm amazing in training." So she turned it around.
All right. So he's telling us here that our imagination is the means. It says the means whereby your redemption from slavery, sickness, and poverty is effected. If you refuse to assume responsibility of the incarnation of a new and higher concept of yourself, then you reject the means, the only means whereby your redemption, that is the attainment of your ideal, can be effected. Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe.
Boy, there's another Neville decoder ring word right there. Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. But if you translate it, what it means is imagine is the only way to attain what you want in the universe. Like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. And so, and he talks about in the paragraph previous, if you refuse to assume the responsibility, then you reject the means, right? He says, because it's your imagination. And so it's your responsibility. It's my imagination that's going to change things for me. Mm-hmm. And so it's my responsibility. And I often like to talk about what I call radical responsibility. And
nice
that means
phrase.
I'm taking responsibility for everything I experience. And that seems like a tough pill to swallow for some people because it's like, what if terrible things happen to them. They're like, that's not, I'm not taking the blame for that. That wasn't my fault. I'm not talking about fault or blame. Certainly some of us have experienced things happening to us. And you can still take responsibility for how you're experiencing it now.
It occurs to me we could even do a word replacement there. Not that there's anything wrong with the way you phrased it, but just as a way to clarify things, we could call it radical assumption. Assuming the power, taking on the mantle of the person who is truly in control of his focus and of his emotional reaction and how he interacts with life. It's a total assumption of this is me. I am doing this. This is me being the conscious creator that I am.
That's interesting. When you said that, I thought about stories. When we watch a movie or a fairy tale or a story, and we see the hero of the story, and maybe it's a superhero, someone who has powers, because we're talking about the powers we have, right?
Yep, that's true. Yeah.
Imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. And think about how many movies or stories that you've heard where the hero had something awful happen to them. Mm-hmm. And yet they overcame it, and they used their own power to fix it, to overcome it, to redeem themselves from whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And we don't generally see them as a victim. Because when we're going to watch it, and we're watching this hero that we love, Wonder Woman, Superman, whatever, and we're like, well, even when she or he are being afflicted, we're like, but they're a hero. They're still a hero in our book, right? We still have the power, and we're rooting for them because in my own experience anyway, just thinking about this, like, I don't tend to see them as a victim.
Right.
And so that's this whole thing, is that when you accept, or he says assume, when we assume the responsibility of changing our life, we're no longer a victim.
It's a good point, because when we watch a movie like that or read a book, or even in a comic book, and we see the hero going through the trials and tribulations, do we think, oh, how terrible it is that he's going through those trials and tribulations? No, we think, okay, he's going to solve this one somehow. How's he going to do this?
Even if we think, oh, this is awful, we think, but it's okay because he's Superman.
That's right. It's all going to work out.
Yeah, she's got this. She's got the bracelet.
Exactly.
So I'm using that analogy to say that's what we can do, is we can recognize, wait, I have the power to choose the way I respond to this, to choose the way I remember this. Mm-hmm. To choose what I make of this, to choose what I do with this. And that's a lot more empowering place to be than, oh, poor me, I'll never get out of this place. Mm-hmm. Right?
Completely different feel to it.
Yeah, we can do it with words, we can do it with our imagination, but we want to be careful to recognize that it's up to us. We can refuse to assume the responsibility.
This is true. And when we do, we're saying, goodbye, go away thing I was asking for.
Yeah. Right. So, imagination is the only redemptive power in the universe. He goes on to say, however, your nature is such that it's optional to you. Whether you remain in your present concept of yourself, a hungry being longing for freedom, health, and security, or choose to become the instrument of your own redemption, imagining yourself as that which you want to be, and thereby satisfying your hunger and redeeming yourself. He ends the chapter with a short verse. Oh, be strong then and brave, pure, patient, and true. The work that is yours let no other hand do. For the strength for all need is faithfully given from the fountain within you, the kingdom of heaven. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's all up to us, but it's optional.
Yes.
It is optional. And he is saying here, it doesn't happen by evolution. In other words, it's not going to just unfold without us being willing to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
I have a
now,
comment.
I would say, some good things happen in our life.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
But the more aligned we are and the more we're seeing ourselves as the person we want to be, the faster they unfold and the more frequently they unfold. Mm-hmm. At least that's my experience.
I think it's true. Because we're attracting everything, but the more in alignment, the more we're imagining, the more we're making it happen deliberately, which is what we're looking for. A couple of comments here, too, from our listeners. Hannah says, we don't see the situation, we anticipate the outcome. And Nasha says, so how self-pity destroys what's to manifest, and as you mentioned, freedom and saying, oh, I'm stuck. Could you please shed some light on this?
Can you ask me that again? Because I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, it's a little bit, didn't quite type out the way she intended, I think. So I'll just read it verbatim, but I'll read it slowly. So how self-pity destroys what's to manifest.
Self-pity, okay.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, freedom and saying, oh, I'm stuck. Could you please shed some light on this?
Well, what happens when we feel sorry for ourselves, and we all have had that experience. Oh man, poor me, this is awful.
Yep.
When we're doing that, we are conscious of being in that place. And that's the consciousness that holds us in that place. And so there are lots of ways that we can get out of that place. Sometimes we can use tools on our own. Mm-hmm. We can meditate. We can choose a different thing, which I think is really important. It is the idea that we can choose. But sometimes when we're down there at the bottom of that emotional range, that energy, that victim energy, where we don't have control of anything, where everything is happening to us, where we feel depressed, sometimes it's really hard to see our way out. And I think that's where friends, family, therapists, coaches, the LOA podcasts that we do, all of these are different things that can help support you.
Right.
Out. And one of the things is recognizing it. This is how I feel, and I want to feel different. I want to feel better. Reaching for the better feeling thought. And, we hear that a lot with Abraham's teachings, climbing that emotional scale, that emotional ladder. It is almost impossible to go from the bottom of the emotional scale, which is victim energy, to the top, which is joy.
In one leap, yeah.
In one leap. It's a progression, and we need to be willing to just look for whatever feels better. And when you're down in that place, sometimes the self-pity place, sometimes the thing that feels better is to feel anger. Mm-hmm. Or to feel frustrated, because it's a little bit more anabolic. It feels a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And you can see this progression, because the next level from conflict, from being angry and conflicted, is responsibility. And that's what we've been talking about, taking responsibility. And so you can actually see that sometimes. People will feel upset over something that happened, but they're at the place where they're so low that they're not really willing to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, it's not going to change. It's a place where we're really arguing for our limitations. This isn't going to get better. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, why don't you do this? No, that won't work. Well, why don't you call so-and-so? No, they don't want to talk to me. It's like, no, nothing's going to work. But we can watch people go from that to a place of saying, you know what? I am going to make that call, or I am going to do something, because this is ridiculous. I'm not going to let this stand. Okay, that's actually a little bit higher on the energy scale. And from there, maybe it's, all right, I'm going to change this. I don't want my experience to be this. I'm going to do something about this. And then the recognition that, okay, everybody's doing the best they can with what they have in any given situation. That includes me. I'm doing the best I can here, and I'm going to make an attempt to create a better situation. Now we're moving into a higher level. Mm-hmm. And then we start loving ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
It's exactly true.
Yeah, and so it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process, and expecting someone, and a lot of times when we're on the top of the mountain, it might be easy for us to expect someone that's way down in the valley to jump up here with us.
Right.
Hey, just be happy. And it's just not always that easy.
No.
It's a process. So, but we have the ability as humans to tap into the imagination and let that be a support for us. I think that's important to remember, is that it's optional whether we remain in that present concept of myself where everything happens to me and I have no power and things really suck and life is terrible and I can stay there if I want to. Mm-hmm. Or I can start figuring out a way to climb out of that valley.
Which you described.
It might take some time, some practice, and I might need support from my family and my friends and a coach or a therapist, and I might need to choose different reading materials, different things that I watch and put into my mind until I'm feeding my mind healthier things.
And what's great about the process you described there of taking it one step at a time, just going for, maybe just get angry about it and then, work up your way up to frustration and so forth. What that process does best, I think, is it encourages us to do the one thing we really have needed to do all along in that, and that is to just simply start focusing on what we want. The thing is that when we're in that bad place, that seems impossible. It seems impossible to focus on what we want because what we want is so high up there. It's so nice. It's so lovely. It's just completely out of reach. But the act of taking those little baby steps is kind of the way of like backing into it almost, right? It's almost like we're just kind of nudging ourselves to turn around and say, oh, okay, I'm going to try this imagination thing again. But just doing it one small step at a time.
And I spoke with someone recently who had created a vignette, and I was so excited to hear about it because it's important. We keep stressing this, and Neville stresses it, but that thing that you are imagining is small. Mm. It's short.
Right.
If it were written down, I could type it out to you in a few sentences.
Yes.
It's not a book. It's not a novel. It's not a whole movie. It's not a 2-hour epic movie. It's just a 60-second or less little thing, and I think that's a lot easier to do.
Oh, it takes a lot of pressure off when you do it that way, because now all of a sudden you don't have to write a novel. It's just like, I just got to come up with this little thing. I can do that.
And the other thing is, the thing I think, if you are in that place where you're really down and you're feeling this self-pity, my guess is that maybe all of the time when we're self-pitying, well, number one, it's always a story. Mm-hmm. It's a story that we're telling ourselves about our situation. We're making our current situation mean something about ourselves, and that's the story that we're telling over and over. And sometimes it involves other people or conversations or events that happened in the past. And True. If that's the case, this is where Neville's revision comes in so handy.
Pruning shears.
We can imagine, I told the story before. I used to teach an intensive intuitive art class. It lasted for a weekend. And the very first thing that I would do with my students is we would sit in a circle and we would get to know each other, and I would have everybody share their very first memory of making art. Usually it involved crayons, because most people's first memory of making art was finger painting crayons or something like that. Kindergarten, right. They were 3 years old or something. And oftentimes, like 85% of the time, the story was not a happy one. Mm. And I've heard so many stories. I've heard stories where someone said they were coloring away, they were drawing a horse, they were so happy, 5 years old or something, just coloring away. And the teacher came over and said, well, you're not very good at drawing, so we're gonna take you over here and teach you how to do this other thing. Let's go play ball or whatever. And I think, okay, these people in my course were anywhere from mid-30s to, I think we had a student that was in their 70s. So I'm like, here's a person, let's say 60 years old, that has been holding on to this one little story about themselves since they were 5.
Yeah.
So for 55 years, they feel bad because they've heard someone say to them, you're not very good at this. This is the perfect instance for Neville's revision.
This is
right?
true.
Because most of those things are usually short statements. We may have a lot of them, but they're just one little instance of someone saying something that really took us down.
Mm-hmm.
And it affected our concept of ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where you can reimagine it happening in a way, maybe reimagining the teacher saying, wow, every time I see you drawing, you're just getting better and better.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really short vignette.
And it can take some time to do that. It can take some time because we have this belief that, oh, well, that I can't change what really happened. I can't, that would be lying. That would be cheating. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. So it can be a little bit of a challenge at first to make those revisions, but we can do it one little bit at a time.
Right, because your brain has grown these neural connections
right.
because it's been remembering this thing over and over. And every time you remember something, you recreate the memory, and it's slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so who knows what really happened 55 years ago, right?
Mm.
It may have changed, and the feelings may be even more charged because every time we've remembered it, it's been really painful. But when we start to change it, that's why it's good if we pick something small that we can just remember over and over. Yes, there may be that argument that comes up that says, well, that's not really what happened. But what we want to do is intend that I'm just imagining this because it feels better. So that's my whole reason for spending this 10 seconds on this vignette, or 60 seconds, or however much time, is because it feels better. It feels better to my brain, to my body, to my heart.
Yes.
It feels better. And I'm just doing it because it's really starting to feel good now. Every time I have this thought that I was a little child and I was coloring away and I was having so much fun, and the teacher came up and said, wow, looking good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It feels good to remember it that way. And
it feels much better.
It's just a memory at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There's no physical component to it.
That's true.
It's in the past. It's completely nebulous. And so, you know what? We get to remember it how we want to remember it in those moments that we're consciously enjoying our imagination.
And for those people who are still kind of married to the idea, well, I still can't change it because it's the past, so it would be really wrong to remember it differently. I would like to tell them about something they may not be aware of. It's kind of a negative topic, but it has a really good point, so bear with me. When prosecutors in a court system are prosecuting a case, one of the biggest frustrations they run into is that they can have 5 eyewitnesses to the crime, and all 5 will have a completely different story about what happened. And even in the process of bringing them up on the stand one by one and having them tell their stories, the stories will change. Not because they're being dishonest, but just because of the way memory works. Our memories are imperfect. Our memories are based on what pieces of the scene stuck with us. And we might it's even possible, this does actually happen quite a bit, for people to observe a scene and they change the way the scene played out because it matches their expectations better than what actually happened. So, if you're concerned about, telling the truth that's not what really happened, guess what? You revise the truth all the time. You may not be realizing it, but you're actually revising the truth. And it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's not because that you're a bad person or you're lying or anything. It's just memory changes. And that's okay. It's okay for memory to change.
Well, and here's the thing, is that because it's something in the past, when we do this revision in the memory, what it is changing is our concept of ourself.
Mm-hmm. That's
because
right.
Remember that our subconscious doesn't make a judgment. It just says, okay, that's cool. Let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say to that idea of it kind of plays into both of those questions about when times are hard and then about self-pity destroying, us. It's just because our self-pity creates a specific concept that we hold of ourselves as a victim. And that just starts to create whatever else we experience.
That's true. By the way, Nasha commented about halfway through our really great description there that she lost connection to the internet. So, Nasha, I would tell you just when we're done here, this whole podcast is going to be available as a replay. You can just replay the video again, but just by coming back to the same post after we're done. Just go to the 45 to 55 minute mark, and you'll be able to pick up all the stuff that you missed. So, sorry you missed it the first time around, but you'll be able to get it just by replaying it the second time around.
Yeah, and I would say somebody asked about, it might have been in the same question about freedom. When Neville talks about freedom right here, where he says, however, your nature is such that it's optional to you whether you remain in your present concept of yourself, and it's in parentheses, a hungry being longing for freedom, health, and security. Freedom and health, security, and I will add in love. Those are usually underneath. They usually are the thing that's underneath what we say we want. Right? Freedom, health, security, love, peace. It's like when someone says, well, I want to make more money, or I want to be married. Certainly they don't want to be in an unhappy marriage, right?
Well, that's a good point, though.
Certainly they don't want money because they've heard of people with lots of money having big money, issues.
Right.
It's because we always think that having those things will bring us something else. And usually it's freedom, health, security, peace, love. Those are the things we all want. And so we think, well, if I had more money, then I wouldn't be limited in the things I could do. I would be free, right? I would be free to say yes. I would be free to travel. I would be free to, whatever. Or maybe it's security. So he's using those things because that kind of covers everything. No matter what it is you want, it's probably attached to one of those things.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. Well, I don't think we're going to get to Chapter 4 today. I said in the title that I wrote for the episode that we were going to get into Chapter 4, but I don't think it's going to happen in the next 2.5 minutes. So.
No, probably not. But that's okay. Like, I love having these questions. That's so much more important to me than getting through the chapter, right? Is like, keep bringing them. Like, keep showing up and asking questions and joining in the conversation. I think that's so much fun.
Well, let's see if we can answer a question in a minute or less, because Nasha had a follow-up. She says, if you want to forget about the past, is it okay to bury it? It's not like you're hiding something. It's just you don't want it.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say yes. Now, if you're having trouble burying it and it keeps popping up and you're pushing it down and ignoring it, but it keeps bothering you or creating a problem or you can't stop thinking about this thing that happened in the past, whatever it is, then I say go for the revision. But we are not suggesting that you should go dig up something in the past so that you can revise it.
Yeah, that's not really. That's don't let. What's the phrase? Let sleeping dogs lie. Just
right,
let that one alone. So okay, before we say goodbye for the day, for people who are interested in a more private, personal connection to talk with you specifically as a life coach, how do they reach out to you?
They can reach me on my website, CindieChavez.com. It's CindieChavez.com. I would love for you to give me a shout.
All right. And hopefully by this afternoon's podcast, when we do the next segment here, I will have my book in hand, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yay. That'll be great.
All right. We hope that you all will join us as well next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.